Here is a scene that I created in an earlier tutorial, and it utilizes gel lighting and true ambience effects. So we've got in the render options raise per pixel 256, soft shadows, true ambience, TA scattering correction, boost light, maximum ray depth of 4. So let's have a quick look how long this takes to render. The hair, as you might detect, is one of the stumbling blocks for the render engine because of the transparency. The rest of the scene's not too bad. So we're talking about an hour essentially there. Now the idea in this is just to go about converting this to a different lighting method as shown in the obscure lighting tutorial, so that to see whether it's more efficient and also produces good results. So the first step in this scene is I'm going to get rid of all of the light sources, and I'm not going to use the sun, I'm only going to use the light generated from the HDRI I'm going to load through the true ambience method and the obscure lighting approach. So as things stand, I need my light source, so I create a radial light, edit it, true ambience optimization, use gel, include only the background, go into the procedural, reset the material. So this diffuse surface acts as the receptor for the light coming from the HDRI. Even though I'm going to use it as a background, I don't plan on having anything reflective in this scene, which will in turn improve render efficiency, but I will continue to follow those steps just in case I want to introduce something reflective. The important step here is to make sure you call this background, because that's the only way we've got to target it. It needs to be an identifiable name. So we call it background and enlarge it to encompass the scene. The ground surface here, I'm going to change the material on it and make it matte, and I'm going to set it to a white colour, or bluey white colour. Right, and what else do I need to do? In the sky and fog I need to check that the atmosphere is off, which it is, and then go into the Skylab image based lighting tab, use HDRI image, open, use this 1280 pixel diameter light probe made by Horo called Treppenhall 2, and I'm going to use that as my light source. I don't need the quality, I don't need specularity. I do need to apply to light source and to have true ambience optimization disabled, so that's unchecked. The sun's automatically turned off for me. I'm going to use it as a backdrop and add it to the sky. I'm going to set this to render in scene, so we'll get some clue as to what's occurring in the scene. I don't need cast shadows, that's going to speed things up a bit, and I will be using light from inside. At this point I need to include the background. Now that allows me to set things up, but as you can see you don't get any preview here for true ambience. So if I turn off light from inside and switch back to exclude, it'll still keep background checked, so I can just switch between these two. I do get something of a preview. The difficulty is that it's rather burned out at the moment, so I can reduce this, and that'll reduce the light intensity because it's being linked through to the HDRI effect with apply to light source. So I can actually use this to give me a preview of my lighting. So I'm going to shuffle this round until I get something that's coming over a shoulder here, sort of thing. So we've got light down one side. We'll say about there. At this point now I need to include and light from inside. That resets things. Now I don't know what the best relationship is between these two figures, so I'll set this up so it will be suitable for a reflection, and then adjust this figure, because obviously you can see the background which is being added but we won't see unless we introduce something reflective. So I'll set this up appropriate for a reflection and then alter the effect level once I've seen what kind of effect I'm getting. So at this point in the render options I'm going to drop it down to low raise per pixel, so I'll try 16. That should give me some clue as to how things are going to look. So I've not got enough light. Well, since I've been threatening to do so, I will introduce a reflective object. I've got one of these two-part cubes. That's a different tutorial, and I'm just going to use that as a guide for how my background looks. So if I enlarge that a step, lift it up onto the ground, zoom in on my scene. Yes, it's sat on the floor, and move it so it's not obscuring the figure, but it is sufficiently close to the camera for me to see a bit of reflection on it. and you can see the highlight on that is the background being reflected. So I need to increase the light levels in this scene now. So I go back into the Skylab and I'll double the HDRI effect, see where that brings us to. Okay, we'll get in there, I think a little bit more. I'll try 35 and see where we are with that. That's quite bright then, possibly a bit burned out there, so I think I've overstepped. Go back down to 30. The lack of preview there is a bit of an irritation, but I can't get around that at the moment. Something of a feature request for the future. And likewise, I've totally failed to get to grips with Dad's studio as yet, and I know that when I've got the time, inclination and money, I need to sort myself out with a better model, but this will do for now. Bless her. Right, I've only got the one pose and the one set of clothes really. Right, I'm just setting the light levels up then so that the background's largely burned out. You can see there's a little bit of noise in there, but that won't matter because at this point I'm going to set the rays per pixel up to 256. I don't need soft shadows anyway because there's no direct light source except that's going out to the gel light that is in turn converting it back into true ambience lighting. So that's saying 15 minutes. So in comparison with the initial render, that's a good improvement over render time. So I'll just pause the video here and then we'll see how this turns out, and we'll make a comparison between where we started. So here we are done with the render, and it occurs to me that there is something that I could mention here. This material on this two-part cube has got a component that responds to specularity. Now I could re-render the scene by with the sun enabled and to just provide specular, but that will probably be rather time consuming, and because it would have to calculate all the rays passing for the direct light in the form of specularity for all the scene and not just this bit. But since this is the only bit that requires it, what I can do is I can utilize the plot render and just render that little bit, and that's going to take 1.5 minutes to pick up the additional effect of the specularity. And we should see when it's done that it's not actually affect the appearance of the rest of the image. There won't be any change in terms of the effect on the ground plane, for example. You're just getting the specular highlight on this cube because of the sun position. In fact, I don't really want the sun there, so I'll pause this here. No, not pause there, stop that, and just re-render that a bit, having moved the sun round slightly and then move the highlight to be more in keeping with the predominant light source from this direction. So looking at the previous image, I'll get it side by side, the gel lights provide a very uniform ambient light that helps cut down on the noise. But if you want a bit of directional light using this obscure lighting method, then you can do away with all the other forms of direct lighting, because we had direct lighting before and soft shadows to create this shadow region here. We've still got a shadow region here, and you can see from the cube that it's actually, there's a predominant direction to the light source without any other additional lighting other than the bit of specular highlight I'm generating from the sun at the moment. So that in turn is why it is a bit more efficient. Obviously we don't have this transition zone, which actually I quite like in this image, but you may not wish that, and so there's that advantage by being able to make the light very large. If we were to make the gel lights very large, then their effect within this area would be weakened and you would lose any effect of a light bias, because you can apply gels to the gel light where you've got more light coming from one side, but you still need them quite close to the model for them to take effect. So there you go, that's that. Now I'll just save this. It's automatically incremented me the number, so I know I won't overwrite the file. And I can turn the plot render control off here just when it's saved. It takes a little while because it goes through its compression process, and I think you should be able to see, or rather you can't see, any transitional join between this portion of the render and the rest of the scene. So there you go, that's the end of the tutorial.